All right, so we're back, and last time we talked about evaluating points on the unit circle using trigonometry or using special right triangles. So, if I gave you uh, this circle, and at point 45, it's square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. So if I say what is sine of 45, it's just the y coordinate at 45 degrees. So we should be able to, solve anything from 0 degrees to 360 because that's a full circle. Well, what if we want to know what is sine of 405 degrees? Now what do we do? Well, what we can do, because degrees, well, sine and cosine are periodic functions. So if I go around once, that's 360. But I can continue going around as many times as I need to. So 405 just means I have to go around more than once. So that's 360. Then I have to go 45 more degrees because 405 minus 360 will give me 45. So it turns out that sine of 405 degrees is the same thing as sine of 45 degrees, which is square root of 2 over 2. These are called coterminal angles. So coterminal angles are angles that have the same initial and terminal side, and they have a difference of 360. So let's say I have 725 degrees and 365 degrees. I don't know why I didn't line that up. But if I subtract these two things, 72 minus 36, you get 360. So these two angles are coterminal. They will start and end at the same spot. If I have 300 degrees and negative 100 degrees, if I was to subtract these, there's a 400 degree difference between those two numbers. So these are not coterminal. And the whole point is coterminal angles, they evaluate at they have the same value. So the same x coordinate, same y coordinate. And I can add 360 over and over and over again. So 100 is coterminal to 460, which is coterminal to, 820, which is coterminal to, so if I add 360, 1180, so on and so forth. All these angles are coterminal to each other. All right, so we're going to try and solve these four problems. We want to evaluate cosine, tangent, sine, whatever the trig function is at these specific angles. And there are a lot of different ways there's normally only going to be five major points. So there's this table that I use. There are a lot of different methods and tricks, and you can look them up on YouTube. But we're going to use this table. So 0, 30, 45, 60, and 90. These are the degrees. In sine, we count up from 0. Cosine, we count down. And whatever answer we get, we divide it by 2. So this is a table that I use to kind of help remember those points, those coordinates at 30 degrees, at 45. So let's say we have cosine of 45 degrees. Well, we're going to go to our cosine row and then our 45 column. So cosine row, 45 column. And we get this. So our answer is going to be the square root, so the square root sine of 2, and we take that answer and we divide it by 2. So there's no math behind this table. It's just a trick to kind of remember. So let's say I want sine of 90. I'm going to go to my sine row and my 90 column. So we get square root of 4 over 2. Square root of 4 is 2. 2 over 2 is 1. So sine of 90 equals 1. And if you go on the unit circle, you will see that answer. All right, so now let's get into these problems. Well, let's say, matter of fact, before we get to these, let's say we have cosine of 120 degrees. Well, 120 is not 0, 30, 45, 60, or 90. But we have to find something called the reference angle. So the reference angle is the distance between wherever you ended, so 120, and the nearest x-axis. So not the y-axis, the x-axis. So the distance between 120, and we know the x-axis is 180, the distance between that is 60. So if I subtract those two, 180 minus 120, you get 60. So cosine of 120 is the same as cosine of 60. However, because I went to the left, and cosine is on the x-axis, because I went to the left, cosine has to be negative. So whatever this answer is going to be negative. Cosine of 60, if we look at our table, is square root of 1 over 2, or negative 1/2. So I hope that's making some kind of sense. But we are going to practice all this stuff with these 4 problems. Okay, so cosine of 690. So the first thing we want to do is find the reference angle for 690. And we do that, we want to find the nearest x-axis and find the distance between 690 and that. Well, 360, so 36 zeros here, and 180, and 360. And if you add 180 again, you get 540. You add 180, you get 720. So if I just keep going around, you'll get to 720. So the distance between 720 and 690, somewhere here, is 30 degrees. So this is the same thing as cosine of 30 degrees. And if we use our chart, which I forgot to add, cosine of 30 is square root of 3 over 2. So sine, cosine, 0, 30, 45, 60, 90. So cosine of 30, square root of 3 over 2. And when the fourth quadrant, so here, plus, plus, minus, plus, minus, minus, plus, minus. Cosine is positive. Cosine is the x-coordinate. So cosine of 690 is just square root of 3 over 2. All right, let's try tan of 480. So now we first find the reference angle. So again, I will write what I'm saying down in your notes. Find the reference angle. That's the first thing you need to do. So again, 0, 36, 0, 180, 360, 540, 720. So if you go around, that's 360. Now we have to go 120 more degrees to get to 480. So it's somewhere here, and we know this is my x-axis, so 480 and 540, if we subtract the two, we either get negative 60 or positive 60, but we're going to say 60 degrees. So tangent of 60. Well, tangent's not on this chart, but tangent is y over x, which is the same thing as sine over cosine. Well, sine of 60 is square root of 3 over 2, and cosine of 60 is 1/2. Well, now we're dividing fractions, and hopefully we know how to do that. Keep the numerator, change the sign, and flip the denominator. These twos will cancel out. You get square root of 3. So tangent of 480 is equal to square root of 3. But we didn't check for the sign. So don't forget that. Make sure you write that down. Do not forget the sign, because if I leave this as positive and the answer turns out to be negative, it would be wrong. So tangent of 480, we're in the second quadrant. So in the second quadrant, cosine is negative, sine is positive. So sine is positive, cosine is negative, which means our answer will be negative. So tangent of 480 equals negative square root of 3. So make sure you check for positives and negatives. You could either do it here or you can do it, at the end. It's up to you, but don't forget that. All right, problem 3. So we have cosecant of negative 450. So it's negative. So what I would do is find a coterminal angle for this negative 450. And you can do that with the higher ones too. So 690, cosine of 690, we could have just subtracted 360. So we're going to add 720 to this. And we get cosecant, and this is just adding 360 twice, right? That'll give us 2 coterminal angles so that I can get a positive value. So you get cosecant of 270. So now if we sketch 270, we're right here. So what is the distance between 270 and the nearest x-axis? Well, this is 180 and this is 360. And it's actually equal distance from both, so it doesn't matter which one you choose. So if I do 270 minus 180, you get 90. So we want to know cosecant of 90 degrees. Well, cosecant is just the reciprocal of sine. So this equals 1 over sine of 90. And if we use our table, sine of 90 is the square root of 4 over 2, which is 2 over 2, which is just 1 over 1. So our answer becomes 1. But gotta check the sign. So at 90 degrees, at 270 degrees, sine is negative, which means this will be negative, which means our answer will be negative. Cosine of 90, actually, cosecant of negative 450 is equal to negative 1. All right, so the last problem, we have sine of 17 pi over 6. So now with this, if you don't know how to work with radians, you can convert this to a degree measure, which most people do. So if I want to change 17 pi over 6 to a degree, I have to multiply this by 180 over pi, which is essentially just 1, so we're not changing the value of anything. These pi's will cancel out. We get 17 times 180 is 3,060, and then we're going to divide that by 6. You get 510. So this is sine of 510. So it's similar to the other problems that we've done. So now we've made something that looks different into something that we know how to do, which is kind of the whole point of math. So we can find the coterminal angle for 510 by subtracting 360. You get sine of 150. So we changed it, we converted it from radians to degrees. Then we found the coterminal angle, and now we want to find the reference angle. So at 150, it's 180, it's 30 degrees. Sine of 30 would just be square root of 1 over 2, or 1/2. We're in the second quadrant. So we went to the left and then we went up. Sine is the y, so it's positive. So sine of 17 pi over 6 is positive 1/2.